Let me tell you about Chinelo, a girl who thought marriage could save her from poverty. But listen carefully, because this story will teach you that some prices are too high to pay. It was a Thursday night when everything fell apart. Chinelo ran through Chief Okafor's compound barefoot, her heart pounding like a drum. Alarms screamed through the darkness. She hid behind a black Mercedes, clutching an envelope that could destroy the man she called husband. Her hands shook as she whispered to herself, "If only I knew what I was marrying into." Suddenly, headlights cut through the night. A car door opened. Chinelo's blood froze when she saw who stepped out. It was the driver, the one everyone said was dead. He stood there calmly, looking directly at where she hid. Then he spoke softly, almost kindly, "Madam Chinelo, you shouldn't have opened that envelope." But how did Chinelo end up in this nightmare? Let me take you back to where it all began. 6 months earlier, Chief Okafor visited Ntage village like a king visiting his subjects. His convoy of expensive cars rode through the dusty roads, and the whole village gathered to watch. Chief was a big man, not just in body but in power. He donated bags of rice to widows and handed out money to the poor. The villagers praised him like he was sent from heaven. "God bless you, Chief," they shouted. Chinelo was there that day, selling roasted corn by the roadside to help her sick mother. She wore a faded dress, but her beauty shone through the poverty. Chief noticed her immediately. As his car drove past, he turned to his aide and said something. The aide nodded and wrote in his notebook. Chief's words were simple but chilling, "That one. Find out who she is." 2 weeks later, Chief's driver and aide arrived at Chinelo's family compound with gifts. They carried bags of rice, bottles of expensive wine, and envelopes of cash. Chinelo's mother nearly fainted from shock. The aide spoke formally, "Chief Okafor has chosen your daughter for marriage. He wants to make her his wife." The family was stunned into silence. Chinelo's hands trembled. This man was old enough to be her grandfather, but he was also richer than anyone they had ever known. Her mother's eyes filled with tears of joy. "This is a miracle from God," she cried. But Nkiru, Chinelo's best friend, pulled her aside with worry in her eyes. "Chinelo, this doesn't feel right. Why would such a powerful man choose you?" Chinelo wanted to question it too, but poverty had taught her to grab opportunities. When Chief visited to seal the arrangement, he looked into her eyes and promised, "You'll never lack anything, as long as you never question me." The wedding was more beautiful than anything Chinelo had ever imagined. The church was decorated with white roses and gold ribbons. Chinelo wore a dress that cost more than her family had earned in their entire lives. Diamonds hung from her neck, so heavy she could barely lift her head. Everyone in the village came to witness the miracle. They whispered with envy and admiration. "See how God has blessed her," they said. "From selling corn to marrying a chief." But as Chinelo and Chief danced, something strange happened. A young waiter approached her while pouring champagne. He leaned close and whispered urgently, "Madam, before you sleep in that house tonight, ask what happened to the last wife." Chinelo's smile froze. She tried to ask him what he meant, but he had already disappeared into the crowd. Chief's expression during their dance remained unreadable, his eyes cold despite his smile. The mansion took Chinelo's breath away when she first arrived. It was 3 stories tall with marble floors that reflected the chandeliers like mirrors. There were more rooms than she could count, gardens with fountains, and staff who bowed when she passed. But despite all its beauty, the house felt cold. Empty. Every door had a key except one at the end of the east wing. It was painted deep red, different from all the others. That first evening, Chief showed her around personally. When they reached the red door, his voice changed. "This is my private study. You are never to enter here. Do you understand?" His grip on her shoulder was tight. "Never." Chinelo nodded quickly, frightened by his sudden sternness. That night, lying alone in their enormous bedroom while Chief attended to business, Chinelo heard something that made her skin crawl. From behind that red door came the sound of someone crying softly. Chinelo tried to settle into her new life. The staff called her madam and treated her with respect, but something felt wrong. She noticed things. Small things. Like how one of Chief's drivers, a kind young man named Jude, suddenly disappeared. One day he was there, smiling and opening car doors. The next day, he was gone. When Chinelo asked the head driver about Jude, the man's face went blank. "Madam, there is no one here by that name," he said stiffly. But Chinelo knew she wasn't crazy. She had spoken to Jude just 2 days ago. She asked the maids, but they all gave the same answer. It was as if Jude had never existed. The strangest thing happened that evening. While making the bed, Chinelo found something under the mattress. It was Jude's name tag, the one he wore on his uniform. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Why was it hidden in her bedroom? Chief showered Chinelo with everything money could buy. New cars appeared in the garage with her name on them. Jewelry arrived in velvet boxes almost daily. The best hairdressers, designers, and chefs were at her service. But there was a catch. Chief insisted she didn't work or leave the compound alone. "Why would my wife need to work?" he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything you need is here." At first, Chinelo enjoyed the luxury. But slowly, she realized the golden gates were also a prison. The guards claimed to be for her protection, but they watched her constantly. Her phone calls were always monitored. Even her visits to the bathroom felt observed. One morning, Chinelo found a piece of paper slipped under her bedroom door. The handwriting was shaky and urgent. It read, "He's watching everything. Trust no one. Get out while you still can." The note wasn't signed. Chinelo decided to test her freedom. She told Chief she wanted to visit her mother in the village. Chief smiled warmly and agreed immediately. "Of course, my dear. Family is important. Take the driver." Chinelo felt relieved. Maybe she had been overthinking everything. The next morning, she got into the car with the driver and her bags. But something strange happened. They drove for hours, but nothing looked familiar. The driver claimed he knew the way, but they kept taking wrong turns. Finally, after 5 hours of driving in circles, they ended up back at the mansion. "Sorry, madam," the driver said flatly. "I got confused." Chief was standing at the entrance, waiting. He laughed like it was a funny mistake. That evening, Chinelo tried calling her mother. A strange man's voice answered her mother's number. "Who is this?" Chinelo asked, panicking. The line went dead. Chief often hosted business meetings late at night. Chinelo was forbidden from attending, but curiosity got the better of her. One night, she crept to the top of the stairs and listened from the shadows. Below, in Chief's private lounge, important-looking men sat around smoking cigars and drinking whiskey. Their conversation was quiet but intense. "The land deal is settled," one man said. "But what about the family?" Chief's voice was cold. "They've been taken care of. People stay quiet when properly motivated." Another man laughed darkly. "And if they don't? Then we make sure they can't talk at all," Chief replied. Chinelo's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She pressed against the wall, barely breathing. Suddenly, one of the men looked up toward the stairs. His eyes seemed to pierce the darkness. He stopped talking mid-sentence. "Chief," he said slowly, "I think we have a listener." When Chief traveled to Abuja for business, Chinelo made her move. She had to know what was behind that red door. Using a hairpin, she picked the lock just like she'd seen in movies. The door creaked open. Inside was not a study but an archive. Filing cabinets lined the walls. Chinelo's hands shook as she opened the first drawer. Inside were documents, death certificates, marriage licenses, and photographs. Her blood ran cold as she looked through them. There were pictures of women, 5 different women, all young and beautiful. Each had a marriage certificate to Chief Okafor. Each also had a death certificate dated within 2 years of marriage. Accidents, suicides, sudden illnesses. Chinelo's hands found another folder with her own name on it. Inside was a blank death certificate with only the date missing. Then she heard it, the sound that made her soul freeze. The front door downstairs opened. Chief's voice called out, "Chinelo, I'm home early." Chinelo quickly closed the folders and rushed out, locking the red door behind her. She ran to the bedroom just as Chief climbed the stairs. "There you are," he said, studying her flushed face. "Are you feeling well?" "Yes, just exercising," she lied, forcing a smile. Chief nodded slowly, but his eyes had changed. Over the next few days, his warmth disappeared. Every question Chinelo asked was met with a cold stare. When she asked about his previous marriages, he simply said, "The past is the past." Her movements became more restricted. That night, her phone vanished from her nightstand. When she asked about it, Chief said she must have misplaced it. The next morning, her access cards to certain parts of the house stopped working. The friendly maid, Ada, who had been kind to her, pulled her aside in the hallway. With terrified eyes, Ada whispered quickly, "Madam, if he suspects you know something, you vanish. Please be careful." The next day, Ada was gone. Just like Jude, she disappeared without a trace. When Chinelo asked the head housekeeper about Ada, the woman's face remained expressionless. "Ada resigned yesterday evening, madam. She said it was a family emergency." But Chinelo had seen Ada just that morning, and she had mentioned nothing about leaving. Something was terribly wrong. That afternoon, while walking through the garden, Chinelo noticed something glinting near the drainage system. She bent down and picked it up. It was Ada's silver bracelet, the one she never took off. Chinelo's heart raced. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then approached the large drain cover. With trembling hands, she lifted it. The smell hit her first, damp and rotten. Then she saw them, wrapped bundles in black plastic bags, stuffed deep inside. Among the garbage, she spotted ID cards, old photographs, and personal items. They all belonged to former workers. Chinelo carefully pulled out what she could reach. There were staff identification cards, driver's licenses, and photographs, all from people who had supposedly resigned or left for family reasons. Every single one had worked closely with Chief in some capacity. They were drivers, accountants, maids, and cooks. All people who might have seen too much. Chinelo's hands shook as she realized the pattern. Anyone who came too close to Chief's secrets disappeared. She was about to close the drain when headlights suddenly swept across the garden. A car was approaching from the east gate, the one only security used. Someone had been watching her through the cameras. Chinelo quickly dropped the evidence back into the drain and covered it. She stood up, trying to look casual, but her heart hammered in her chest. The security car stopped 10 feet away. The guard stepped out slowly, his radio crackling. He looked directly at her with cold, knowing eyes. After that incident, Chief's behavior changed dramatically. He became affectionate again, almost too affectionate. He brought her breakfast in bed, held her hand during dinner, and smiled at her constantly. "I know I've been distant," he said one evening. "Let me make it up to you." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a plane ticket to Dubai and a diamond necklace worth millions. "First class, my love. You deserve a break. Go shopping, relax, enjoy yourself." Chinelo wanted to believe him. Maybe she had been wrong about everything. Maybe the evidence was from years ago, before Chief changed. She held the ticket and necklace, feeling hope for the first time in weeks. But something made her check the ticket carefully. She called the airline that night while Chief was sleeping. The woman on the phone was confused. "I'm sorry, madam, but this booking reference doesn't exist in our system. Are you sure this ticket is real?" Chinelo's world crumbled. Even the gift was a lie. She tried calling her family again, desperate to hear a familiar voice. This time, her friend Nkiru answered her mother's number. "Nkiru. Thank God. Where is my mother? Why are you using her phone?" Nkiru's voice was strange, distant. "Chinelo, your family moved away months ago. They said you told them to leave, that you are cutting them off because they embarrassed you now that you're rich." "That's a lie." Chinelo cried. "I never said that. Chinelo, please don't call again. Your mother said the phone went dead." Chinelo stared at the screen in horror. Chief had isolated her completely. Her family thought she had abandoned them. She had no phone, no access to the outside world, and no one who knew the truth. Suddenly, she heard footsteps outside her bedroom door. Slow, deliberate footsteps. The doorknob began to turn. Someone was coming in. It was just a maid bringing fresh towels. Chinelo exhaled in relief, but she knew she was running out of time. The next day, a nervous man in glasses visited the mansion. He introduced himself as Mr. Emeka, Chief's accountant. While Chief was on a phone call, Mr. Emeka approached Chinelo in the hallway. His hands trembled as he pressed something small into her palm. "If you ever want to live alive, take this to the police," he whispered urgently. It was a flash drive. "Everything is on here. Everything is done. But you have to move fast." Before Chinelo could respond, Mr. Emeka hurried toward the exit. She watched from the window as he got into his small Toyota and drove through the gates. Chinelo felt a flicker of hope. Finally, she had proof. But that hope died 30 seconds later. She watched in horror as Mr. Emeka's car exploded in a ball of fire just outside the compound gates. The blast shook the mansion windows. That night, Chinelo locked herself in the bathroom and plugged the flash drive into her laptop. Her hands shook as files opened on the screen. What she saw made her sick. There were records of illegal land deals where families had been forced off their property. Death reports filed as accidents, but with payments made to coroners and police. Bank statements showing millions stolen from government projects. And a folder labeled Wives 1 to 5. Chinelo clicked on it with dread. Inside were detailed files on each woman Chief had married. Their backgrounds, their families, and how they died. Each death had been carefully planned and executed. The fifth folder was labeled Wife 5, Chinelo. It was password protected. Chinelo tried every combination she could think of, but nothing worked. Then she remembered the diamond necklace Chief had given her. She ran to get it and looked closely at the engraving inside. It was a 6-digit code. She typed it in. The file opened, revealing a single document, instructions for transferring all her property to Chief upon her death. The document was already prepared, just waiting for her signature and a death date. Chinelo's death was already planned. As she read further, her blood turned cold. The method was listed: medical emergency during routine checkup. Estimated date, within 2 weeks. Everything was organized like a business transaction. Her jewelry, the cars registered in her name, even the bank account Chief had opened for her, it would all transfer to him automatically. Then something appeared on the screen that made her gasp. A message window popped up: process already initiated. First appointment scheduled, tomorrow, 10 a.m., Dr. Chokuma. Chinelo hadn't scheduled any appointment. This meant Chief was moving forward with his plan. She had less than 24 hours. She quickly copied all the files to her phone's hidden folder, just as she heard Chief's footsteps approaching the bedroom. She shut the laptop and hid the flash drive inside her bra. When Chief entered, she was pretending to sleep. The next morning, Chief woke her with unusual cheerfulness. "Good morning, my dear. I've arranged for you to see our family doctor today. Just a routine checkup since you've been looking stressed." Chinelo's stomach twisted, but she smiled. "That's thoughtful. What time?" 10 o'clock. "I'll have the driver take you." Chinelo dressed carefully, hiding a small knife in her purse. At the private clinic, Dr. Chokuma greeted her with a practiced smile. But Chinelo noticed how he avoided eye contact. During the examination, she watched his every move. When he turned to prepare an injection, Chinelo saw the label, sedative, high dosage. "What is that for, doctor?" she asked, her voice steady despite her terror. "Just something to help you relax, madam." As he approached with the needle, Chinelo suddenly clutched her chest and collapsed, faking a seizure. In the confusion, she grabbed her purse and ran for the exit. But when she reached the clinic door, two of Chief's security guards stood blocking her way. Chinelo's mind raced. She couldn't go through the front. She spotted a service door marked "Staff Only" and ran toward it. The guards shouted and chased after her. She burst through the door into a laundry area where workers jumped in surprise. "Please help me," she begged, but they looked away in fear. They knew who her husband was. Chinelo saw a large laundry cart being wheeled toward a delivery truck. Without thinking, she climbed inside and buried herself under dirty sheets and towels. She held her breath as the cart rode outside. The driver, a young man who hadn't noticed her, loaded the cart into his truck. For 20 minutes, Chinelo stayed hidden as the truck drove. She allowed herself to hope she might actually escape. Then the truck suddenly stopped. She heard the driver answer his phone. "Yes, sir." "No, sir." "I understand, sir." His voice shook with fear. The back door opened and sunlight flooded in. The driver pulled back the sheets and stared at Chinelo with terrified eyes. "I'm sorry, madam. I have family. I can't help you." He grabbed her arm and dragged her toward the gate. In the distance, Chinelo saw Chief's convoy of black cars approaching. Just as the guards were about to grab her, a motorcycle roared up from nowhere. The rider wore a helmet but motioned for her to jump on. Chinelo didn't hesitate. She leaped onto the back and they sped away just as bullets rang out behind them. They drove for 30 minutes through back roads until they reached a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Only when they were inside did the rider remove his helmet. Chinelo gasped. It was Jude, the driver everyone thought was dead. "How?" "They said you were gone." Jude's face was grim. "I faked my death. Chief wanted me dead because I saw too much, so I made it look like I drowned. I've been gathering evidence against him ever since." He showed her folders of documents, photographs, and recordings. "I have everything we need to bring him down. But there's something you need to know." Jude hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "What?" Chinelo asked. "You won't like who's been helping him cover everything up," Jude said quietly. "Someone close to you." Jude drove Chinelo to a safe house, or so she thought. It was Nkiru's house in Lagos. When Nkiru opened the door, her face went pale. "Chinelo, what are you doing here?" "Nkiru, I'm in danger. Chief is trying to kill me." Chinelo explained everything while Nkiru listened with tears streaming down her face. When Chinelo finished, Nkiru collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. "I'm so sorry," Nkiru whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" Chinelo asked, confused. Nkiru looked up with red eyes. "Chief has been paying me, Chinelo. Every month, he deposits money into my account. He told me to keep him informed about your family, your movements, your state of mind. I thought he just wanted to protect you. I thought once you married him, he would treat you well and I could keep the money. Chinelo felt betrayed to her core. Her best friend since childhood had sold her out. How could you? Nkiru reached for her hand. I thought he'd stop. I swear I didn't know he wanted to hurt you. Before Chinelo could respond, car headlights flooded through the windows. Chief's men had found them. Jude burst in through the back door. They've surrounded the house. We need to leave now. But Chinelo had a different plan. She was tired of running. No, she said firmly. I'm meeting with Chief. I'll wear a wire and get him to confess everything on record. Jude shook his head. That's suicide. It's the only way, Chinelo insisted. She called Chief from Nkiru's phone. I want to talk. Just you and me. I'll come home. Chief's voice was smooth as silk. Of course, my love. Come home where you belong. That evening, with a recording device hidden in her bra, Chinelo walked back into the mansion. Chief sat in his study, relaxed, sipping brandy. I knew you'd come back, he said. Chinelo sat across from him. Tell me the truth. Why did you marry me? Chief smiled coldly. Because you were poor and grateful. Easy to control. Just like the others. Did you kill them? Of course, he said casually. When they outlived their usefulness. Chinelo's recorder captured every word. But then Chief leaned forward and pulled out her phone. He'd been recording too, and he smashed both devices against the floor. You think I didn't plan for this too? Chinelo's heart sank as Chief's smile widened. Did you really think you were clever enough to outsmart me? He stood up, towering over her. Every move you made, I allowed it. Every escape, every little discovery, I let it happen just to see how far you'd go. Suddenly, the study door burst open. Jude rushed in with 4 police officers behind him. It's over, Chief. But Chief just laughed. He pulled out his phone and showed them a screen. Commissioner Adeyemi, are you seeing this? The lead officer's face went pale. On Chief's phone was a video call with the police commissioner himself. Stand down, the commissioner ordered his officers. Chief had the entire system in his pocket. Jude's face fell in despair. They were trapped. But Chinelo remembered something. The flash drive was still hidden in her clothing. While Chief gloated, she secretly handed it to Jude behind her back. Jude understood immediately. He broke the window and threw the drive to reporters who had gathered outside. Within seconds, someone plugged it into a phone, and the evidence began streaming live on social media. Chief's face turned white as his crimes broadcast to the world in real time. In desperation, he grabbed Chinelo and dragged her toward the balcony. If I go down, you're coming with me. Chief screamed, pulling Chinelo toward the balcony edge. His grip was iron-strong, his eyes wild with rage. Below was a 3-story drop onto the same marble floor where his first wife had supposedly slipped and died. Chinelo fought back with everything she had, scratching and kicking. They struggled at the railing as police tried to intervene. In the chaos, Chief's foot slipped on the wet balcony floor. For a moment, everything moved in slow motion. His eyes widened in shock as he lost his balance. He grabbed for Chinelo, but she pulled away just in time. Chief Okafor fell, his scream cutting through the night, and landed with a sickening crack on the marble below. The same marble that had ended his first wife's life now ended his. Police flooded the mansion. Reporters surrounded the property. By sunrise, Chief's entire empire had collapsed. Chinelo stood on that balcony as the sun rose, broken but finally free. She whispered to herself, if only I knew that every comfort bought with silence cost more than poverty ever could. Sometimes the most expensive thing you can own is something you were never meant to survive. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of survival, wisdom, and truth.